Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Reelblack podcast, and as always, I am joined by my good friend Eric
Oh,
Payne.
I thought you were gonna take me away from it. I was getting ready to do something.
Oh.
What's up, y'all? What's going on?
We got Eric Payne in the building.
This guy said he's gonna take me away from it and come back in a nanosecond.
No, we don't waste time when we're talking about revolution.
That's right, Black
And
Power.
today, well, I mean, we're talking about Kwame Nkrumah. You know, I mean, what do you know about Kwame Nkrumah? Because
I think they call him the father of Pan-Africanism, right? He could be called that, and unifying all people of African descent and within the African diaspora, that unity, which is probably why, they sabotaged his efforts towards the end.
Today is a good friend, and she's in the midst of raising money to do a documentary on Kwame Nkrumah. So we all get to learn. With us today, Charlene Poindexter, all the way live from LA.
LA.
How's it going,
everyone? Hey.
What's up, Sarah?
How's it going?
All right.
Doing real good. Well, congratulations on your Kickstarter campaign. It's off to a good start.
Thank you.
Educate us. Tell us about Kwame Nkrumah and why you want to make this film.
I'm so excited to tell this story. Especially at a time where critical race theory is being debated, so we can't even learn our own history in schools. We're definitely not learning African history, and Kwame Nkrumah's story intersects with Black American history, and it's such a powerful story. For those people who don't know, Kwame Nkrumah was the first post-colonial president in Africa. He took office in the Gold Coast, what we now know as Ghana, in 1957. And just sort of, ripped power away from Great Britain, who was the colonizer under Queen Elizabeth, the same Queen Elizabeth that people know about today with the hats, who's still alive today. Yeah, she was a colonizer. So anyway, just to go back to his beginning, he grew up in a small, poor village in Ghana. And as a young man, he became a teacher, and he met a man named Nnamdi Azikiwe, who was a journalist and kind of a, Black nationalist, and, had a lot of ideas that Nkrumah appreciated. And he was like, you know what? I got educated in the United States, in Lincoln University. You should check it out. And Nkrumah was like, word, say less, I'm there. And he went to lengths, and he ended up at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, which is one of our oldest HBCUs. He got a degree in economics, sociology, and theology. He got three bachelors of arts undergrad. During that time, he preached in Black churches. He hung out in Harlem over the summers. And then he went to University of Pennsylvania and got a degree in philosophy, a master's in philosophy. So he was just amazing. And then he went to London and put together, he was going to school in London. He put together the 5th annual Pan-African meeting. And I don't know, he was just an amazing person who attracted really bright, amazing people. And he had a vision from the very beginning of African unity. He started a secret society called the Circle. And several of the men who were in the secret society ended up becoming presidents of their countries. Nnamdi Azikiwe, who recommended Lincoln University, was Nigerian. He ended up becoming the first post-colonial president of Nigeria. Jomo Kenyatta became the first post-colonial president of Kenya. Julius Nyerere became the first post-colonial president of Tanzania. They're all people that he, brought together and talked about Pan-Africanism with and African unity. And I think a lot of people don't understand how huge Africa is.
Right.
So if you ask Google, there are 54 countries in Africa. If you go to the African Union site, and Kwame Nkrumah is responsible for starting the African Union, which still exists today, which still has a mission today, it's represented by 55 countries. And so incidentally, I made my Kickstarter campaign 55 days long, to honor the African Union. Anyway, so yeah, at the same time, and I'll, cut this short so you guys can ask me questions, but at the same time, Black leaders were fighting for civil rights. African leaders were overcoming colonialism. We were making strides at the same time. And while Black leaders were suffering the FBI here with COINTELPRO, African leaders were suffering the CIA. And ultimately, Kwame Nkrumah, while he was on a peacekeeping mission in Vietnam, because the Vietnam War was going on and it was ridiculous and we shouldn't have been there. While he was on a peacekeeping mission, the CIA backed a coup to overthrow his government. That was in 1966. And he never set foot in Ghana again until he was buried there. So it's really sad how his career was cut short. And so the FBI and the CIA both were motivated by racism, but also by the Cold War and a real anti-communist sentiment. And African leaders coming out of colonialism were socialists. Many of them were socialists, and they believed that socialism was a more Afrocentric type of government than capitalism. And they didn't necessarily want to align with Russia. They didn't want to have to take money from the East or the West. The goal was to be independent, be able to have control over their own natural resources. And of course, Africa is rich in cocoa, diamonds, gold, titanium. I mean, it's just a very wealthy resource continent. And so they wanted to be able to trade amongst themselves and internationally without, being controlled by Europe or the United States. But the United States was really concerned that African leaders were going to align with Russia, and they went about sabotaging their leadership.
What will be your cinematic approach to telling this story?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of archival photos and even archival videos. He gave amazing speeches. And really the photos got me excited because if you watch my trailer, on my Kickstarter campaign, you'll see him with Martin Luther King, with Malcolm X, with W.E.B. Du Bois. These people were really taken by him.
Right.
They were really influenced by him. There's like a famous kind of story about how Nixon went to essentially his inauguration when he came to power, and a lot of people flocked to it. King was there, and Nixon turns to a Black guy standing next to him and says, "Wow, like, how does it feel to be free?" And the guy was like, "I don't know, I'm from Alabama." Yeah, so Ghana was like an inspiration, and what they were able to achieve was really an inspiration. And W.E.B. Du Bois spent the last years of his life working with Kwame Nkrumah.
Right.
Yeah, because Du Bois committed to the Communist Party and left the United States because he was being persecuted, and went to Ghana. And I mean, I don't think communism was ever huge amongst Black people, but Angela Davis was a communist.
Right.
And really the first Black person who ran for president of the United States wasn't what's her Chisholm.
Shirley Chisholm.
Shirley Chisholm. It was actually Charlene Mitchell. And a lot of people just don't really know about her. She was nominated by the Communist Party, and she wasn't allowed to be on the ticket in a lot of states because there were rules against running as a communist. And that's actually who I get my middle name from. Sarah Charlene Poindexter, named after Charlene Mitchell. Anyway, and so I just think, like recently, one of the Black Lives Matter people were condemned for studying Marxism. And I just think it's ridiculous. I think we have to study more. There's such a condemnation of socialism, Marxism, communism, and people can't even fully define what they are or distinguish them.
Right.
And so many African leaders embraced the ideas. And so I think they're worth studying. And so part of what my film is going to do is, be about ideas. I'm going to use Kwame Nkrumah to tell Black American civil rights stories, Black African liberation stories, and stories about ways of governing, and how his vision still impacts us today. So like, I would love, like in my fantasy life, somebody comes along, they say, you know what, your Kickstarter campaign's cute, that little 88,000 you're trying to raise is great, but here's 10 million.
Right.
What you want to do. And in that case, I'm doing a 4-part documentary series. So I get, in the first 3 parts, it's beginning, middle, and end of Kwame Nkrumah's life. And then the 4th part is completely narrative. And it's a story about a future where there is African unity. He had this vision where Africa would become the United States of Africa.
Right.
So that all those countries would be states and it would be one single country. And you know how people fell over themselves in excitement over Wakanda. This fiction place.
It fictional,
technology-based idea of the future. Like, I would love to do a narrative piece where it's not so technology-based, but it's more politics-based, economics, and what it would look like sometime in the near future if we really did have control over the continent.
Right. That was, what does it date back to? Who? King Leopold dividing up the continent of Africa for the European nations. They've always had this interest in keeping us divided on the continent. I mean, way back then, understanding those resources, that the continent, that a united Africa is a strong Africa, you know.
And look, they literally had a conference sometime in the 1800s, maybe
Right.
1834. Don't quote me on the date. I don't
Right.
remember off the top of my head,
Right.
where European nations got together and drew the map and said,
Right.
okay, this is my land. Okay,
Yeah,
this
King,
is
I think it was King Leopold.
Yeah.
Of what, Belgium, or was it Mike? I think
Belgium's King Leopold, yes.
right,
Yeah.
right. Who had this conference.
And colonialism had been existing already for a long time, but this conference kind of solidified it. And they literally divided tribes. So today you get Maasai living in Kenya, you get Maasai living in Tanzania, because they just drew a line through people's families to say, you know, I want this piece of land because it has a mountain and you already have a mountain. So you get that piece of land. Meanwhile, people are living there.
Right.
And look, the Unity Project, it's easy to romanticize, but there are over 2,000 languages spoken. I don't know how many tribes there are.
Right.
I mean, there's huge, massive diversity. So how do you unite an entire huge continent? What are going to be the official languages? Where is the government going to be located? How are you going to get a unified currency? And that's the thing that I love about film, right? Because you can take a really hard, complicated idea that you want to see in reality and just write it. Just write it, make it up yourself and make it a reality on film, envision it. And that's the other cool thing. I could talk about Nkrumah all day, but when he got into office, he set up a film commission and he commissioned 150 different documentaries, not just in Ghana, but all over the continent, that sort of highlighted his ideas. So Burkina Faso, Mali, Tanzania, there were all these films made and they've been archived. I don't know who's seen them. They haven't been digitized. We were just talking about your collection, Mike D, and what a job it would be to digitize it all. It's no small thing, but the government said that they would pay for it. And of course, there's bureaucracy, so it's never happened. But I would love to get a hold of those films and also include them in my film.
Right on. No, so you're obviously super passionate about this. What can we do to help you realize your vision?
Well, look, please, everybody donate. You can donate as little as $1 to Kickstarter. The way Kickstarter works is you don't get charged until the campaign is over. So that's on August 30th. So if you know you're going to have $1 between now and then, please throw it my way. The more people that donate, the bigger sign that sends to potential distributors that there is an interest in this topic. So please, please donate. That's how I'm going to get the funds to get to Pennsylvania and to Accra to do my initial shooting and to get a first draft of this done so that I, can do more. And, follow me on social media. I'm at Nkrumah Film on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So, I'm starting to put out content regularly, and it's just a good way to keep in touch.
Right.
And then, share the project with anybody you think would be interested. Because, I'm not going to get the project funded just by my own small circle of family and friends. There got to be people that I don't know who want to learn more about this man and this important part of our shared history.
That's cool. So we're talking with Sarah Charlene Poindexter, if you haven't caught on or know how to read, who has a new project called Nkrumah Film, and you can donate to help make it a reality.
I just want to say, like, when people said, I'm tired of slavery stories, I heard you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say there's an African American joint history that takes place after slavery that's really interesting. And and I understand that people are tired of trauma porn, and I can't say that there's zero trauma in the story, but I can say it's pretty empowering. And for me, I've always wondered, like, okay, we have a challenged life here with racism and police brutality coming out of that. And, why don't they come get us? Like, we your great grandkids, and you know what's happening. And I'm like, why don't they? And I know they have their own problems, but dang, but yeah, the African Union after the George Floyd incident was like, okay, cut it out.
Right.
They came together and went to the UN and said, no,
right,
not okay.
Right.
And I think that there's a vision of okay, and I'll say another thing. I know I'm interrupting myself. Mm-hmm. I've often thought, if I got a huge amount of power, what would I do with it? Like global power. And my first instinct is I would crush my enemies. I would crush them. They would be sorry for all the things they've done to me. Kwame Nkrumah, on the other hand, was like, oh yeah, I think we should unite Africa so we can be a force for good in the world.
Right.
Okay, so he was T'Challa. He's the real life T'Challa.
And I just think, like, well, so much of the world depends on Africa for their resources. We got our cell phones wouldn't work. There's also, like, what kind of force for good could we be? What could we do? How would we handle global warming if we had the power to dictate what happens? I think the whole world would be a better, how people say, oh, if women ran the world. Well, I kind of feel like
if people of color,
Black folks ran it, things would look different. And it could be, I mean, that's what his vision was. And so I think we've got to dream big to survive.
Right.
And I hope that my film, because he was a visionary, that's the biggest thing I could say about him. Like, he came from this small village and decided he was going to go to school in another country, become a leader, connect with other leaders, wrangle power that had been seated for hundreds of years. Like, he had such a vision. I think we should know what that is. And I think we should do everything we can to honor the good of it.
We're on a global platform, so people watching are watching from all over the planet, quite frankly. And, one of the things that I'm about is not dividing, seeing the commonalities in these situations. So I think it's great that you're connecting the dots between the Black political leaders of the 60s and those who were in power in Africa at the time.
And I will just say, like, I do believe that African stories should be told by Africans. And there are some brilliant African filmmakers on the continent.
Absolutely.
Many, many years ago, probably 20 years ago now, I went to FESPACO, which is the Cannes Film Festival, like the African version of the Cannes Film Festival in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, South Africa.
You could say the other way around, just to give it a little more power. Cannes is the European version of FESPACO.
Of the European film festivals. Like, literally hundreds of thousands of people converge on this small landlocked West African country to watch African cinema. And at the time that I went, Netflix wasn't around. Certainly, it's only been recent that they've been propagating more African cinema, but there were all these films that I knew the West was never going to see that were incredible. So I do believe Africans should, but I also believe that a Ghanaian filmmaker telling the Kwame Nkrumah story would be telling a very different story. Like Kwame Nkrumah was voted Man of the Millennium in Africa. And most of us, we don't know enough about him. We were like, okay, who's the greatest African leader? We would have said Nelson Mandela. Maybe we would have said Haile Selassie. That's the only people we've really heard of. But everybody in Africa knows who Kwame Nkrumah is. So I think that knowing who he is and what his vision was would create a different kind of film than I'm doing. And or maybe I'm just justifying the fact that I'm gonna make the film.
Well, so few of our people know about even Haile Selassie nowadays. On the average, and knowing the importance and the greatness of him, much less, the other folks that you mentioned, and Kwame Nkrumah. When you learn a little bit about him, the strategy and the organization, that the United States probably felt was dangerous between the African Americans and the Africans, that connection, that eventual unity.
Like they told him, like they didn't even want him meeting with Malcolm X. Can you imagine? And he had intel that Malcolm X was going to be assassinated. He begged him to stay in Africa, and Malcolm X took the information and said thank you and went home. And we lost them. Maya Angelou spent years in Ghana under Nkrumah's rule. She wasn't planning to. She just got there. She had other plans, and she was like, "Okay, this is amazing.
This is how it's supposed to be."
To feel free. So, well, for the once again, for those who want to contribute, let's give you the stage.
Yes, please. If you go to nkrumahfilm.com and you click a link, it'll take you to my Kickstarter page. I blast it all over my social media. So you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at Nkrumah Film. That's NKRUMAH. And so, I've got a long way to go to reach my goal, but I have until August 30th, rather. So if you're seeing this before then, please support and please let people know about it. I appreciate you so much.
Sarah Charlene Poindexter, Nkrumah Film, at Nkrumah Film, nkrumahfilm.com. Just make a pledge, show your support. Nothing's charged until she reaches her goal, which we encourage you all to help her meet, because this is a story that needs to be told, and it's a story that is undertold in the United States, especially. And as she says, it's the kind of story that needs to be taught in schools. And unfortunately, if we're not in charge of telling our own stories and making our own films, this kind of information will get lost completely. So please support my friend Sarah Charlene Poindexter.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.